Totally get up and then. Oh, I'm live. Sorry, folks. I didn't even know. I was having technical difficulties there. My apologies. Welcome, Mini Canada. Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. This is such an honor. I am coming to you today from the beautiful Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. We have a sunny day here. It's been a tough couple months, but we are getting by. And I am so thankful to be working with Mini Canada and talking to all of you out there from across the country and from around the world. I've been talking to so many people on the Mini Canada side about this group, about the passion that Mini drivers have. And I am so excited to bring my passion, my excitement into your homes today. I may not own a Mini and I may not be a passionate driver, but trust me, I understand passion in my heart. For about 10 years, I sold software. So I was kind of traveling around North America, selling different widgets online. But my passion forever was cooking. It's what I always wanted to do. I just didn't see how I could possibly make it work for my life. But passion has a funny way of forcing your hand. And so about 2 years ago, I decided to leave my job and chase this dream that I've always had around becoming a chef. I used to spend every single weekend cooking for my friends, dreaming about someday cooking food for people. And I just couldn't handle it any longer. So I went for it. I quit that safe job. And through the most serendipitous thing in the world, 2 days after I quit my job, I also applied for MasterChef Canada, got accepted, went to the auditions, made it through that first part, and then I made it onto the show, and I actually fought my way to the finals where I sadly lost, unfortunately. But it totally changed my life, and it's all because of that passion that I know you guys have for your minis, for the open road, and for those road trips, which I really hope are coming soon. So today, now that you know who I am, I have been spending my time, again, I'm in Dartmouth. This is my home kitchen. I live here with my wife and my two little girls, Violet and Lucy. Violet is 3.5, and Lucy is 9 months today. And it's been an insane couple of weeks being home here with them. It's been lovely. It's been trying. The highs are highs and the lows are low. But one thing that's kept me sane is this room right here. Cooking is what is it's medicine for me. It's meditation. This is where I feel safe and I can process things. So about 2 days into my quarantine, I decided, you know what? I'm going to just go onto my Instagram and cook. And we'll call it the East Coast Quarantine Kitchen. And I started off, people were kind of watching. And then it started taking off. So I have cooked every single day on Instagram. I have taken those videos and uploaded them. And you can follow along if you want to at Andy's East Coast Kitchen on Instagram. but I've been doing it for 63 days, and it's been so fun because I'm getting to interact with so many people from around the country and around the world that are just like you at home, cooking up a storm. And more importantly, which I love, people are baking up a storm like crazy. It is amazing. The amount of messages that we're getting of people baking, it's so cool. But there's some challenges out there for us bakers. There is a major flour shortage, and there's a major yeast shortage. So we took that in consideration today when choosing what we were going to cook. So when we started trying to think of ideas of like what is a dish or what is something that we can cook that represents the unique personalities that are mini drivers, it seemed like a natural fit to go with the donut. The donut is an amazing way to showcase your personality, your creativity, which I know is stuff that mini drivers hold very dear to themselves. You can show your personality through the type of donut you choose, through the toppings that go on top of it. So that's what we'll be doing today. We're going to be doing the old-fashioned cake donut. I love this. This reminds me of taking road trips back in the day, stopping at little villages throughout Nova Scotia, going into these little cafes and getting freshly made donuts. Those road trips, unbelievable. For all of you out there that are chatting, I'll try to keep up on the chat as much as I can, but favorite road trip memories. Let's see what you got. What are nostalgic road trips that just bring you back? And if bonus points, if there's any food that you can think of on those road trips, let's hear them. I appreciate it so much. So let's do this. So I gave myself a brief introduction. For all you people out there from wherever you are, let's hear where you're dialing in from. You can chuck it in the chat. I would love to know where everyone's calling in from. But yeah, enough of me blabbing on. I think it's time for us to bake. So baking can be intimidating, but today there is no need to be intimidated. We're going to walk you through this step by step. My trusty Bertha is going to be here. This is what I call my KitchenAid mixer. I've learned that a lot of mini drivers have nicknames for their vehicles. Check it in the chat. Let's hear what your nicknames are. I would love to hear it. But this is not necessary today. If you don't have a mixer, again, don't. There's no excuses here. We can do this by hand, and I'll walk you through that as well. So baking, a big piece of winning when baking is making sure you're properly prepared. Like everywhere, you would not go on a road trip without having a tank full of gas or making sure there's air in your tires. It's making sure that you have everything prepared. I say that as if I always do it, but this is a relatively new thing that I've started with baking, and it's made my life so much better. It's all about getting your things in order. In the food world, we call this get your mise en place right in front of you, totally prepared. So what I've done is I went ahead and actually measured out all the ingredients. And most importantly, I put them all away. Everything that I'm done using, I put away, wash those dishes. That, for me, makes a big difference. I used to get stressed from baking because of that. There would just be too much around me, and I would just get overwhelmed. This actually makes a really, really big difference. So plan ahead. So what are we going to need today? I know that you guys have a lot of the ingredients, but if you're just joining us, I'll give you the background of what we're working with. So there may be a flour shortage, but we do need a little bit. We have 4 cups of flour. We have 1 cup of milk. Again, if you have cream or buttermilk, that is fine. If anything, that might actually be more delicious. I've got 4 teaspoons of baking powder, a half teaspoon of nutmeg. Nutmeg is the secret ingredient here, folks. It is spectacular. That is, to me, the smell of nostalgia. I love that. That is a crucial ingredient. On top of that, I've got a half teaspoon of salt, or sorry, not a half teaspoon, a teaspoon and a half. 2 fresh eggs, I've got those there, a cup of sugar, and a 1/4 cup of melted butter, a little bit of vanilla, just for good measure. So we got all this in front of us. So let's start by, if you don't have a mixer at home, again, no worries. I'm going to use this one. But if you don't, just get a bowl and a big spoon, and you're going to be all good. So when you're baking, there's a lot of people that, again, I've talked about this, it can be intimidating. I get it. I used to be very intimidated baking. But oftentimes when you're dealing with a pastry, like a donut, like a muffin, like a cake, it's all about really starting with the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients. But why you do that is all about making sure that you don't overwork the flour. That's key. So think of when you're making a bread or pasta. the key there is to really work the flour so that you create those gluten networks. Not here. That's not what we want. We do not want to do that today. So we're going to basically put all the ingredients in the mixer with the dough hook, and then we will incorporate the flour. So why don't I kick on instead of just blabber on here? We're going to chuck in the sugar. We'll start with the sugar. So for those of you baking along, I'll take my time. I won't get too far ahead of us and make sure that you can keep up. Sugar in. I'm going to put in the nutmeg, the baking soda, and the salt. Put that in. Here's a neat little thing that I never knew until actually my time on MasterChef Canada was you always have to be careful when adding eggs in with sugar. Sugar, believe it or not, will actually start to cook the eggs if you just let them sit on there. So it's key. The second you crack in an egg onto sugar, get it moving, or it'll actually start cooking the egg in the exact same way that if you're using lime juice and like a light dish, it'll actually cook it like a ceviche. It's not anything you need to panic about. It's not going to cook like that, but you're going to want to stay on top of that. So again, if you don't have a mixer, you're going to get a little bit of a workout here. But that's all good there. That is all good. So let that kind of beat away in there. And I have a trusty spoon close by, so we'll make sure that we go into the bowl and mix around. So that's looking good. Next up, a quarter cup of melted butter. Butter, specifically. It is the magical ingredient for a lot of chefs. And I wouldn't think margarine may work. If you're going to do anything, I'd probably add in lard. Crisco could probably work as well. So we can add that in directly here. So I love this donut. It's classic. I find the type of desserts that make my heart sing are those desserts that are all about nostalgia. I love that. That to me is what desserts are all about. I don't need anything fancy, just nostalgia. It's lovely. Okay, so that's beaten around there. Again, nothing complicated. Step by step, we're going to get through this. Trust me. Stick with me. Next up, I've got that milk. So I'm just going to slowly stream that in. Actually, you don't really need to slowly go there. We'll get that in. And then a little bit of vanilla. I always say, I think in the recipe I have a teaspoon. I always just use a capful. I don't even know how much a capful is. It's always just my measurement that I use. Another key tip on vanilla. So when you go to the grocery store or really anywhere, you're going to see different options for vanilla. You'll have imitation, artificial vanilla extract. It can be expensive to get the good stuff, but it makes an immense difference. That is what makes good food, whether it's baking, whether it's cooking savory. It's all about the ingredients. Choose wisely. Oh, I hear my children just arrived, so if you hear them in the background, I've warned them in advance to keep quiet, but we may see some little ones here. So that's going to be mixing away. Next up, what we're going to do here is add in that flour. Again, we talked about the importance. We do not want to overwork this. I can't state that enough, because what will happen is the end result will be very chewy and overworked. So just take your time here. We're going to slowly add in the flour little by little. Probably like cup by cup would be more than fine. And don't panic. It's not something that if you overwork it, that it's going to be the end of the world by any means. But just take your time here and slowly incorporate the flour into the mixer while it is going. So, along with this as well, if you wanted to incorporate more flavor, like you like cinnamon, if you want, I was even thinking earlier about adding in some lime zest, lemon zest. A great way to add in additional flavor. I know mini drivers, there's all little ways to show your personality. Baking is the exact same thing. There may be constructs with baking. People sometimes think there's too many rules in baking. I don't buy that. There's constructs and there's frameworks that you have to work within, but it's not a limitation. You can show your personality and kind of play within the lines. So with that, what are some ways that you've kind of worked with your mini? I know that we have many minis in our neighborhood, and I've seen the Union Jack on the rearview mirror. I've seen different ways to show your personality. Would love to know how you guys show your personality through your mini. When preparing for this, we talk so much about how the individual types of mini that an individual chooses represent so much about their personality. So it's been so fun to get to know the mini brand more intimately, and it's really amazing to see the community that's all around it. So I'm just going to keep working this here. Again, the cool thing, and it can be a little bit trying for people that are just getting used to baking, is that recipes can be a little bit tricky because with baking specifically, it a lot comes down to, if there's anyone out there that likes wine, it's all about like the terroir or where you are on how the flour and really how it all reacts together. So I may be saying to okay, it's 4 cups exactly for me to make this dough perfect. But maybe if you are living in an area that is not as close to the sea, it just plays around with the moisture level. So it's a lot of like looking and seeing how the dough is reacting. If it looks too wet, add in a little more flour. If it looks a little too dry, add a touch more milk or a little bit more melted butter here. This will come together really nicely though. Oh yeah, there we go. So I'm just going to pop this out onto a flat surface and finish the job with my hands. I'm just going to get rid of this dough here. And I will retire Bertha, my mixer, for the night here, and just pop her back out of the way. So, how we doing out there, folks? Is there many people baking along? We got some bakers kind of joining us today. Either way, this is a great thing. So, before I even finish that thought, this is a great thing. This dough can be made in advance. So, one thing to keep in mind as well with donuts is they're absolutely incredible fresh. There's very few moments in one's life that you get to eat a fresh donut. So take advantage of this opportunity. If you are baking, you're going to want to make sure this is not like a cookie or a pie where you want it to cool down. You want this baby hot. It is unbelievable. So we can get this prepped in advance. This dough will sit in the fridge or the freezer. In the fridge, this will sit for days. I would say you could be fine making this dough and letting it sit for 2 or 3 days. Absolutely no issue. But what you can also do is you can freeze this. No problem at all. All you're going to want to do is make sure that it defrosts before you start cooking it. So any dough that you make, you always want to make sure that it rests. You rest it for multiple purposes. One is allow that if we did create any of like gluten networks, we want those to relax. That's the same with any bread that you're making, any pasta. There's always a resting period. That makes the bread or whatever the dough is lighter and fluffier. So we're going to do that reason as well. But for this dough specifically, where it is a wetter dough, you want to make sure that that melted butter gets incorporated throughout the entire dough. So we're going to want to put this into a plastic bag. You can put that into saran wrap, whatever you have, and push as much of the air out as you can. And we're going to pop that into the fridge. So I'm just going to take a second here and wipe this down because this is where the magic starts happening. So if you are baking along, that's as far as we'll be able to bake along for the time being because you're going to want to put your dough in the fridge. So I'm going to run over and chuck this in the fridge and grab through the magic of TV, I made one this afternoon. So we're just going to pop this out. You're probably going to want to let that sit in the fridge for at minimum 30, 40 minutes. Again, what that's doing is allows the butter to not only incorporate through, but also kind of recongeal, because that's a key part here as well. So the dough smells so good. The vanilla in there as well as that nutmeg, just to me is so, I love the smell so much. So what we're going to do now is we're going to want to lightly flour the work surface here. Pat that down. We don't want to incorporate too much flour. That is key. There's enough flour in there. It will just get too tough. So we're just going to start with that. What you're also going to want to do is heat up your oil. So I know cooking with oil can be intimidating for a lot of people. It doesn't have to be. There's stuff that you should do that keep it safe, but it's not going to jump out and bite you. You just have to make sure that you follow a few simple things. I always, if you have a deep fryer, obviously this is much easier, but I have it over there on a cast iron pot. You're going to want to use a pot, a heavy bottom pot, ideally. So the reason why we do that is that when you put something in to get fried, it tends to bubble up. So you just want to make sure there's enough walls that it doesn't overflow. That's where you get into trouble with deep frying, is when that overflows and hits a hot element. you can run into some trouble. But that, as long as you have a deep pot, you're going to be all good. On top of that, take your time heating up the oil. You don't want to rush that process. That's where it can kind of get really, really hot. And another piece, a key tip to have as well, is have a thermometer to be able to measure the temperature. I'm just going to take a quick measurement of that. I will do all the frying in front of us over here, so you'll be able to see it front and center. But I just want to make sure that it's up in the range that we're going to need it here in the next little bit. I think we're going to be all good. Yeah, we are laughing. I'm going to put that on low. So those are the key things. Don't get intimidated. We're going to do this together. If you can make sure that you have some idea what the temperature is, we're going to want that temp around 350 to 375. And keep in mind that as soon as the dough goes into the fryer itself, it will drop the temperature of the overall fryer. This is cold dough going into hot oil. It will drop that temp. So keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, so I'm just going to roll this out here and give that a little, again, not too much more flour. You're going to want to roll that out to about a quarter of an inch to half an inch in thickness. So I'll give you a little look there, kind of what I'm working with. That sort of thickness. I kind of like these donuts really thick. If you're going to have a donut here. We're not going to have these little tiny things. Let's have a proper sized donut. Okay, so that's looking really good. The smell is so incredible. I love it so much. That nutmeg is just calling out to me. So what we're going to do next is we're going to start cutting out the donuts themselves. The hard part is over. Again, these can be intimidating. Donuts sound like there's something that you'll never be able to make at home. Trust me, you can make these at home. You can do it. Trust me. So I'm just going to pop this over here just to get more prepared for what comes next. So let's cut these bad boys. What I have here is a set of ring molds. These are relatively cheap. I think $20 for a full set. They're worth their weight in gold. I use these constantly in my home cooking. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and punch out the dough or the whole of the donut. And I'm just going to go around, try to make sure that the ring molds are as close to each other as possible, just to not waste dough. The cool thing here is even if you have leftover dough, you can make them into Timbits. I was doing these the other day with some people that were in the U.S. So if there's people in the U.S., munchkins. I didn't know that was a thing. In Canada, we have the little dough balls called Timbits, munchkins, which I thought was kind of cool. Either way, even if you have to fry a piece of dough like that, that might be an ugly looking donut, but it still would be a delicious one. Save the dough. We can make that into another ball and roll out more donuts. Absolutely. Try not to waste anything in your kitchen. So we'll leave that over there. Now I have a smaller ring mold. I'm just going to go through and punch out those center pieces. Again, that could be a wine bottle top. Is the exact shape you're looking there. So no excuses here. If you don't have these ring molds, again, don't feel intimidated. Use like a cup. I love that part of cooking. Like on my Instagram, I coined it the quarantine kitchen. So I don't go out for ingredients. I use whatever's in my pantry. And that's been, in a lot of ways, super liberating creatively because it's created constraints. But don't let those constraints give you an excuse not to make these. Again, if you don't have these cutters, if you don't have one of the ingredients, there's ways around it to make it work. So that's what we're going to be working with. Oh, I'm getting so excited. So I'm just going to pop these onto a rack here. And then I'm going to run and grab the oil. And we're going to chat about how to do this safely. But again, not something that we need to be intimidated. We are going to do this. We're going to do it together. Okay, I'm just going to move this dough out of the way. A couple things out of the way. Give some space to make sure that we're in a good place. So a couple things you're going to want to do in advance of frying anything is you're going to want to have space that you can, when you take the fried piece out of the dough, the dough out of the fryer, you're going to want to make sure that it has space to drain. So that could be onto paper towel, or you can use a rack like I'm using here. So I'm just going to go over and grab the oil so you can just see what's going on right in front of us. I will be right back. Okay. This is always the scary part. If I drop that, this will go viral for all the wrong reasons. Okay, so I'm just going to check the temp. This is a very handy tool to have on you, just to be able to check the internal temperature of your steak, the internal temperature of any baked good that you want to do. And again, if the temp does get too hot, it's no biggie. It will be forced to drop once I put in these cold pieces of dough. So that's going to be right at 360. So we're right in the wheelhouse. I'm going to turn this on. Just wanted to see how hot it actually was. I'm just going to use a little camp cooker here, and we're looking good. So while that's kind of chilling there, what you can also start doing now is starting to think creatively about, okay, what's this all going to look like? How are we going to finish this? How am I going to show my personality on my donut in the same way that you guys show your personality in your mini? So what I did today was did a little bit of prep around how we're going to make this delicious. For me, I love nostalgia. I love old school. So what I did here is I put about a cup and a half of white sugar and then 5 tablespoons of cinnamon. So this is dead easy. It smells, oh man, it smells like a beaver tail for anyone in Canada. I love those things. So that is there. That's ready to rock. You have to have sprinkles. So what I have here is, of course, whenever I think mini, I immediately go, my dad is from England. I start thinking of that Union Jack. So I've got sprinkles of blue, white, and red, the Union Jack style. And then I've got some toasted coconut because that's always delicious. But get creative. There's no boundaries here. We can follow frameworks for the dough, but for the topping, go whichever direction you want to go. I also have some metallic sprinkles that my wife picked me up. Before we dunk those donuts, one thing I do want to talk about is if you are going to be adding sprinkles or any of the toppings, what you're going to need is a really easy glaze. This is dead simple. Don't worry about measurements specifically. It's more so the process here. So I'm going to take some icing sugar, let's say around a half a cup, and just pop it into a bowl of sorts. So pop that back there. Now I'm going to take a couple teaspoons of milk and just pour that in. A little milk goes a long way here, so don't go too crazy. And then I'm just going to give that a mix. And you can play around with the consistency. That milk is actually starting to melt the sugar. And this is exactly, if you wanted to add some food coloring in here, this is what, like those Homer Simpson donuts, there might be a few other things that go in there to make it really, really sticky. But this is kind of it. This is a beautiful glaze and just a really easy way. I kind of like the glazes to be really rugged. Like at Tim Hortons, the sour cream glazed donut. That's my favorite one. So that's what we're looking for. That's the consistency. I might add in a touch more icing sugar just to thicken it up ever so slightly. But that is starting to look pretty great there. Okay, here we go. All right, that's looking good. Now it's time to fry off some donuts. If this is your first time frying, welcome. Your life is about to change. This is super easy and really fun to do. I'm just going to make sure that flame is up. Now, we're going to drop the dough. Anything you fry, always lay away from you. Never lay it this way because that's where the oil could flop right onto you. So inside, I know you guys can't see that well. I probably have about that much oil. So what will happen is the donut will actually fall down completely and then will bubble up to the top. And the bottom of the donut will get cooked first. And then once that, because it will float up to the top will not be actually getting that cooked. Once the bottom is perfectly brown, so you're looking for like a dark brown, but nothing too crazy. Once that happens, you flip the donut. So total cooking time happens really quickly here. You're going to want to set a tongs, kind of make sure that the donuts don't stick together. So now the donuts have risen to the top. You guys will see what this looks like when you're doing this at home. But dead simple and so much faster than baking. You could bake these. It would be a different result. It wouldn't be exactly the same, but it would be something fairly similar. So those are coming along there. Now let's get our mise en place for the decorating all ready. So I've got those sprinkles all set up. I've got the coconut. I've got that glaze ready to rock. I'm actually going to transfer these all over onto this pan so we can use this cooling rack. It's absolutely crucial when frying or really cooking, this is applicable across savory and sweet, is resting your food is really important. Any protein you cook, I know people talk about it all the time with steak, same with chicken or pork or really whatever you're cooking with protein, you always want to let the protein relax after cooking. It allows the juices to be reincorporated. For this, what we're going to do is let the oil drain out, and then we're going to then add on the cinnamon and sugar. So the cinnamon sugar wants to be added on when it's very hot. So these donuts are coming on and looking beautiful. They're a beautiful brown on top, looking absolutely lovely. So people, once we get out of quarantine, are there any big road trips going down? Would love to hear where that first road trip is going to be happening. Chuck it in the comments. I'd love to have a little peek and see where the plan is to go. Sorry, just take a look. Okay, these are looking awesome. Look at that. Quick, easy. It happens so fast. I'm just going to chuck those down onto the rack here. Oh, the smell of those are crazy. Have a peek. Isn't that awesome? I'm so psyched. I love cooking so much. So I'm going to keep on frying these away in a moment, but I'm going to just decorate these in front of you because we're nearly there. We want to make sure that we dress these while they're still very hot. That's key. But I'll pop that off there and get this out of the way so I can show you how we go about dressing this up. And this is such a fun way to show your personality. I've been cooking so much with my kids, specifically the 3.5-year-old, less the younger one. But this is such a fun way to get the kids involved, get them decorating, talk about the process of cooking. It's science. I love it. So that is donut number 1 coming out of there. Oh, a little bit stuck. Again, you want to make sure you're doing this while that donut is hot. Give it a little shake. And I mean, come on. Look at that. Smells incredible. Again, eat it while they're hot. It's key. It's absolutely key. We'll give that one another shake here. I love the classics. I definitely will do one with some sprinkles just to show you what it looks like, but I don't think that can be beat. It's absolutely delicious. So I will show you how we go about icing one because this is super fun and a great way to show personality. So we've got that glaze right there. Again, it's just icing sugar and a little bit of milk. So we're going to take the top of the donut and dip it directly into that glaze itself. Beautiful. So boom, like that. We're going to lay that down. So I'll take the Union Jack style sprinkles here and drop them on top. I really was planning earlier today to use one of these cake donuts to make a club sandwich for all you clubman drivers out there. But I didn't have bacon. And I thought, you can't have a club sandwich without bacon. Isn't that awesome? So I told you, donuts are dead simple. You can absolutely do this at home. I appreciate you guys spending your Friday night with me. This is super fun. Thank you, Mini Canada, for inviting me to do this. Thank you, all of you Mini drivers, for inviting me into your home. I appreciate it greatly. Again, my name's Andy Hay. Follow along on Instagram, the East Coast Quarantine Kitchen. My Instagram handle is Andy's East Coast Kitchen. And make sure you share your donuts. If you're making these at home, tag me, tag Mini Canada. And so excited to have met this community. And I appreciate you guys having me. And I hope you all stay so safe, so healthy. And thank you all. I hope you picked up some tips. I'm going to dig into one of these donuts now. Thanks all. Appreciate it.